I received a call from my husband, who is living alone for work. Our relationship has already grown cold.
Hello. How are things over there?
His greeting was so casual that it was hard to believe we hadn't spoken for 3 months. Long time no see. Why are you calling?
I'm coming back tomorrow. I have something to tell you. I'm going to live with Aubrey from tomorrow, so please leave my castle.
Arrogance at its peak. However, this was not much of a problem for me. It was even expected.
What's wrong? Say something.
I see. Maverick seemed to be looking forward to my reaction. However, he seemed somewhat disappointed when it didn't meet his expectations.
Aubrey really likes my house. I don't want to take out another loan now, so you guys can rent a place and live as you please.
Sensing something, Serenity peeked out from somewhere. She seemed to know who was on the other end of the call. She suddenly appeared and said loudly to her father over the phone,
"It's okay. We've already decided on our new place to move to. You can come back without worry."
Maverick was surprised by Serenity's appearance and said nothing for a while, but after a moment, he seemed to understand the situation and laughed defiantly.
I see. So, the woman I have to support and the rebellious daughter are leaving. That sounds comfortable.
But that wasn't all. I've also filed for divorce. You don't need to contact us anymore. Goodbye. And with that, I hung up the phone. Serenity had an indescribable expression on her face. Although Maverick had become like a different person now, it was understandable since she was parting ways with him, once a kind biological father. Still, it wasn't all bad.
I'm always sorry for making you take care of an old man like me.
No, it's fine. This is my job. I have been working as a caregiver for a long time. Under the guise of daycare, I provide home care for elderly people in my assigned area who need assistance with daily activities. It's not an easy job. However, for someone like me who always wanted to help others, it felt like a calling. Has anything changed or caused you trouble recently?
Not particularly. Oh, but the other day at the company.
Taking care of daily needs isn't the only part of the job. For example, he has been a successful businessman running a large company for a long time. His thoughts and awareness are still clear, so he occasionally visits the company. However, his body doesn't always cooperate, and he can't work as actively as he used to, which causes him stress. Listening to such stories is also part of our job as caregivers. As time passed, I informed him that it was time to leave, and he smiled a bit sadly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I talk too much.
It's okay. I'll come again tomorrow, so please take it easy.
Thank you, as always. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow.
I'm home.
Welcome back.
Our family wasn't wealthy, but we had built a modest house and lived peacefully with my husband Maverick and our daughter Serenity. Or so I thought. At some point, Maverick changed. He used to be kind and valued our family, but as he got promoted and had more solo assignments, he began to show arrogance. No matter how capable he was at work, this was home. He seemed unable to distinguish between the two. His transformation was so drastic that it was almost frightening, as if he had been hiding his true nature all along. At first, he just seemed to be in a bad mood, but gradually his attitude changed, and recently, although he didn't resort to violence, his bad-mouthing became more noticeable. The target was mainly me. Complaints like the meal preparation is slow and you're clumsy kept pouring out one after another. Of course, I was worried at first. Given the amount of bad-mouthing, I thought he must be under a lot of stress and tried to empathize with his struggles, but all my efforts ended in failure. In the end, it wasn't that he had changed, but that he had always been this kind of person. Occasionally, I receive unjust criticism at work, but honestly, the verbal attacks from a family member are much harder to bear. Trying to mediate between us was our 16-year-old daughter, Serenity. She has been my emotional support.
What's for dinner tonight?
I'm planning on fried chicken. Is there something you want to eat?
No, nothing in particular. I was just curious.
Even in such an environment, she has grown up to be a strong, bright, and straightforward child, which is the most gratifying thing for me. As we were chatting about trivial things for a while, Maverick came home a little earlier than usual. However, as always, he didn't say a word when he came back. So, I had to start the conversation. Welcome back. You're early. At some point, my attitude had become distant. I was surprised when I realized it myself.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Tonight's dinner is fried chicken.
Even so, Serenity interacted with him as usual. At times like this, her resilience made my heart ache. Then he responded with an outrageous remark.
You do dirty work taking care of old people. Make sure you wash your hands properly before cooking.
What an insult. I was so shocked by his words that I couldn't say anything, my mouth agape. But Serenity stepped in.
Hey! How can you say that? That's the worst.
Usually, Serenity would mediate, but this time she couldn't stay silent.
What? Are you in your rebellious phase? How troublesome.
He continued to badmouth Serenity. After saying whatever he wanted, he disappeared somewhere. My emotions were in turmoil, a chaotic mix. In the end, I was so shocked that I couldn't cook anything that day. Some time passed after that incident. One day, Maverick came home at his usual time. But something unusual happened.
Excuse me.
A woman I didn't know came in with him. Excuse me. Who are you?
Didn't I tell you? This is Aubrey, my subordinate. She'll be having dinner here today, so prepare a meal for her too.
Of course, I hadn't heard anything about this. Even if I had, I would have refused such a request.
Nice to meet you.
This woman, Aubrey, looked about a decade younger. I immediately understood. I didn't know the true intention behind today's act, but they were probably in that kind of relationship. If so, it made sense why he was so harsh towards Serenity and me. To him, we were probably nothing more than a burden.
Hey, Stop dawdling and make dinner quickly. You're so clumsy, it's unbearable.
How was I supposed to hurry when I had just learned about this? But since she had come, there was no choice. Reluctantly, I decided to cook an extra portion. While I was preparing the meal, Maverick kept praising Aubrey. Since Serenity had quickly retreated to her room, it was clear who he was talking to.
Aubrey is a true career woman. She's competent at work and beautiful, a wonderful subordinate.
I thought the next words would probably be, unlike someone clumsy.
That's not true.
A transparent response. What was I witnessing?
By the way, how do you like our house? It's newly built.
At this point, I finally understood Maverick's true intention in bringing Aubrey to our home. He wanted to show that he was a dignified head of the household and to boast about his house. Such blatant shallowness. However, understanding this gave me a strategy. Not that it was anything grand, but for now, I just needed to ignore them. I had many questions, but I could address them later.
It's a lovely home. I really like it.
With that, Aubrey began to relax as if it were her own home. She sank deeply into the sofa, sighed, and looked up at the ceiling. Her thick makeup matched her thick skin. Maverick, on the other hand, watched her with satisfaction, not reprimanding her. No wonder, since the day's purpose had mostly gone his way. Honestly, I was speechless. I'm sorry, Serenity. Can you wait for dinner? I sent a message to Serenity. Soon, I got a reply.
Sure. Oh, can I have some snacks instead?
Yes, eat whatever you like. I had to ask Serenity to wait for dinner. When weighing the options of having her eat in this distorted atmosphere or being a bit hungry for a while, the latter seemed much better. The meal I made wasn't anything special. I just stir-fried some meat and served it with a side of vegetables. Originally, I had planned to make meatloaf, but I completely lost the motivation. As expected, Maverick fiercely criticized it.
What is this? Can't you make a decent meal?
Well, you brought a guest suddenly, so I didn't have enough ingredients. Aubrey, I'm sorry, but could you please bear with this? Aubrey said nothing, just looked at Maverick with a confused gaze. I had no interest in what emotions were behind that look.
Geez, this is why. Make sure you can cook a proper meal regularly.
The conversation didn't flow after that, and the atmosphere was just an abnormal space where time passed quietly. Maverick was probably boiling with rage inside. But that couldn't be helped. If that's how he wanted it, he needed to understand that I had my own thoughts. If he wanted to entertain so badly, he should have cooked himself, assuming he had the skills. The next morning, I found a piece of paper on the dining table. It was deliberately placed where it would be noticed. It was a sticky note attached to a divorce paper. As expected, those two were already planning to get rid of me. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a divorce paper here the day after yesterday's events. The note read, "If you don't intend to fix that terrible attitude, sign this. I'm leaving for a 3-month business trip. Prepare to leave the house by then." Another business trip. Whether it was true or just an excuse, I couldn't tell, but it didn't matter. I could leave this barren space. This note brought some relief to my heart. Serenity, can I talk to you for a moment? I tried to explain the situation to Serenity when she woke up, but it wasn't necessary. She looked at the paper on the dining table and said,
I understand. It's okay. I'll go with you, Mom.
Unconsciously, I hugged Serenity and cried. 3 months later, I received a call from Maverick.
Hello. How are things over there?
His greeting was so casual that it was hard to believe we hadn't spoken for 3 months. Long time no see. Why are you calling?
I'm coming back tomorrow. I have something to tell you. I'm going to live with Aubrey from tomorrow, so please leave my castle.
Arrogance at its peak. However, this wasn't much of a problem for me. In fact, it was within my expectations.
What's wrong? Why don't you say something?
Is that so? It seemed like Maverick was looking forward to my reaction. However, when it didn't meet his expectations, he seemed a bit disappointed.
Aubrey really likes my house. I don't want to buy a new house and take out another loan, so you two can just rent a place and live as you please.
Sensing something, Serenity peeked out from somewhere. She seemed to know who I was talking to. She suddenly appeared and said loudly to her father over the phone,
It's okay. We've already decided on a new place to move to. You can come back without any worries.
Maverick was surprised by Serenity's appearance and said nothing for a while, but after a moment, he seemed to understand the situation and laughed defiantly.
I see. So, the woman I have to support and the rebellious daughter are leaving. I guess I can live comfortably.
And that wasn't all. I've also submitted the divorce papers. You don't need to contact me anymore. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone. Serenity had an indescribable expression on her face. It was understandable, as she was parting ways with him once kind biological father, who had now become a different person. Still, it wasn't all bad.
Have you settled everything?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Ha ha ha. No need to thank me. It's a give and take situation. Well then, I'll be on my way. Feel free to come to me if you need anything.
About 3 days later, one morning, I was awakened by an incredibly loud noise coming from the entrance. Someone was banging on the door without any regard. When I realized it, I had a pretty good idea who it was. Of course, I also knew what they would say. What is it so early in the morning? Please stop. You're disturbing the neighbors.
In this mansion so far away from everyone, who cares about disturbing the neighbors? What is this house? Explain everything.
During the 3 months Maverick was away on a business trip, this happened. The elderly man I was taking care of, Mr. Anderson, was a wealthy man with no relatives, having lost his spouse early on. Mr. Anderson would always say this whenever I visited him.
I don't like being alone. That's why I'm so happy when you come, even if it's for work.
In fact, he loved to talk and would listen attentively to important matters, and even to trivial things with great delight. The important matters were none other than the situation at my home. With his years of experience, he could see through any attempts to hide marital disputes and would gently encourage me to talk about them. As a result, Mr. Anderson was very concerned about Serenity and me. As he became less able to move around, he started expressing more of his worries.
But recently, I've been thinking, if I don't like being alone, maybe I should just move into a nursing home.
So, are you planning to put this house up for auction?
No, actually. Would you be interested in living here?
I couldn't believe my ears at his unexpected proposal.
From what I've heard, your husband is quite selfish. If that's the case, you should cut ties with him and live here. I'll find a nursing home, and you can live here with your daughter.
Are you serious? I couldn't possibly accept such an offer.
What are you saying? You've taken care of this old man and even saved my life. It's a fair reward. No, it's not even enough in my opinion. I'd rather have someone I want to live here than auction it off to strangers.
Indeed, there was a time when I visited him outside of work hours and, by chance, found Mr. Anderson collapsed. I administered first aid, called an ambulance, and accompanied him to the hospital. Looking back, if I hadn't visited on a whim that day, he might not have survived. Mr. Anderson continued.
So, what do you think? Would you grant this old man's wish and accept the offer? Of course, I'm not in a hurry for an answer, nor do I intend to force you.
Our long relationship wasn't for nothing. His eyes were sincere. And it was certainly an offer I had hoped for. The divorce papers had just been presented to me recently. While the 3 months were fine, I would need to find a place to live after that. For now, I decided to take the proposal home and think it over.
Ah, you still have 3 months, right? Take your time to think it over. Just don't forget that I sincerely wish for this.
After much discussion, Serenity and I decided to accept Mr. Anderson's generous offer.
I see. That's a good decision. Now I can leave here with peace of mind. Thank you.
At that moment, my smartphone rang. Yes, it was the call from that time. And now, in the present.
So why am I about to be demoted? I haven't done anything wrong at work.
I don't know anything about that. In fact, it was the first I'd heard of it. But I could somewhat see how it had come to this. Maverick held a fairly high position in the company. I believe it was above the level of a department head. But above him was none other than the former resident of this mansion, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson was the chairman of the parent company where Maverick worked. To Maverick, he must have seemed like someone from another world. I, too, only learned this fact just before receiving the mansion, and I was greatly surprised. Surely, Mr. Anderson must have taken some action to reprimand Maverick for his behavior.
If I don't accept the demotion, I'll be fired. Explain why this is happening. And what is this mansion? I thought you'd be living in some rundown shack.
I don't know what I don't know. If I had to say, it's probably because of your attitude. You're really being a nuisance, so could you please leave? I calmly shut the door on him. Where would I have any obligation to help now? That said, what happened to Maverick? The answer probably lies with Mr. Anderson. Around noon, I went to the nursing home where Mr. Anderson lives.
Ah, just as you guessed. I made a few adjustments on my end. To think of treating such a diligent and kind person so poorly. Foolish humans need to be taught a lesson.
In response, all I felt for Maverick was pity. Where did Maverick go astray? It's too late to think about it now, but given our long association, I can't help but ponder.
Now I finally feel relieved. I can't forgive anyone who disrespects a benefactor. However, I'm sorry for dragging you into an old man's selfishness even after you left. I need to make amends for this too.
No, it's more than enough already. I can't accept any more.
I'm sorry, but I must insist on this selfishness until the end. In a way, it's my current reason for living. Please don't take away my enjoyment.
When he said it was his enjoyment in old age, I couldn't find the words to respond. In that case, I wanted to maintain a give-and-take relationship, not just receive charity. Even if the scales were tipped, I felt I should do so. Just as my new life was beginning to settle down, I was taking appropriate actions against Maverick and his mistress, Aubrey. According to what I heard from the lawyer during the process, Maverick couldn't tolerate the demotion at any cost and resigned. Considering his arrogance, it was likely that his pride couldn't accept the reality of demotion. I nodded at his thought of I'd rather quit this job than be demoted. It was easy to imagine. It must have been an impulsive decision without considering the consequences, and the outcome was obvious. On the other hand, that woman Aubrey. Although there was no direct punishment for her, it seems that even a career woman couldn't overcome the rumors, and although she didn't resign, she was feeling quite uncomfortable. She also broke up with Maverick, who had resigned, and their relationship fell apart, but she couldn't escape the alimony and was reportedly venting her anger everywhere. I felt pity for her too, but it was her own doing. While thinking about such things and organizing various documents, the unfamiliar intercom rang. On the monitor was the weary-looking Maverick. I didn't want to answer, but it was clear that ignoring it would cause trouble. I steeled myself and opened the door. What do you want?
I retract it. I will withdraw the divorce.
I couldn't believe my ears. What was he saying?
See, I apologized. I'm going to live here too.
Saying something incomprehensible, Maverick tried to enter the house. Wait, what are you talking about? There's no way I can let you in. The divorce papers were filed a long time ago, and how is that an apology? That's not an apologetic attitude at all. At this point, he was more than just arrogant, he was the embodiment of arrogance. I couldn't hide my agitation and hurriedly tried to close the door, but the embodiment of arrogance blocked it.
If it's your house, it's my house too. Let me in.
Fear gradually took over my heart. In the midst of the chaos and struggle, I somehow managed to push him out and close the door. Unable to think clearly, I could only stand there in the entrance. On the other side of the door, Maverick was trying to force his way in. After about 10 minutes of this, I finally realized I should call the police and ran to get my smartphone. Just as the commotion outside changed slightly,
Hey, hold him from that side.
Stop it! This is my house.
Stay still.
I heard such voices. Wondering what was happening, I looked through the doorscope and saw Maverick struggling with two men in uniform. It was then that I remembered this mansion was contracted with a security company. Somehow, the security personnel had come to restrain Maverick. I peeked out through the gap. One of the two men noticed me and called out.
Are you okay? Are you hurt?
I'm fine.
That's good to hear. We've secured the intruder, so you can relax.
According to them, the security camera at the entrance had captured everything, allowing them to respond quickly. Given the location of this mansion, I couldn't rely on reports from neighbors or passers-by. I felt truly saved when the security guards arrived. After that, although Maverick stopped coming to the house, the phone calls and emails increased. The worst were the emails to Serenity. He sent several messages a day asking to meet. It was so excessive that I consulted a lawyer, and Maverick was issued a restraining order by the family court. Finally, I could feel true peace of mind. Now, I am visiting Mr. Anderson at the nursing home to explain what happened and, above all, to express my gratitude once again.
Oh, you've come to see me again. I'm so happy.
I wanted to thank you properly today. This is a small token of my appreciation. Saying that, I handed him a gift box of sweets.
I told you, you don't need to do this. It's a give and take relationship.
Then please accept it.
Ha ha ha. All right, all right. I'll gladly take it. How have you been?
Thanks to you, I've been able to continue my work without any issues. We ended up living in a mansion unexpectedly, but without becoming arrogant. I continued my work, and Serenity focused on her studies. Since I never did anything expecting something in return, I believe I can continue working with the same mindset.
That's wonderful. Though it may be presumptuous of me to say, I hope you'll continue to keep an old man company. I'm sure there are many others who feel the same way as I do.
Of course.
Thank you.
He smiled gently.
By the way, how is your daughter?
Serenity? She found a university she wants to attend and is studying hard.
I see. University. That's a great ambition. Well then, I'll cover the costs.
What? The sudden offer left my mind blank. Knowing Mr. Anderson, he probably wouldn't give me a chance to refuse. Are you sure?
Of course. To me, without any family, she's like my granddaughter.
It seems our give-and-take relationship will continue.
How did you like this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.